and floods. And I was in the DRC last week, and the floods were really a disaster. Thousands of people impacted. Now, regarding the reality of the global warming, we are plus 1.1 degrees, and you see that extreme weather has tripled already in 30 years, whereas we are only at 1.1 degrees, and this will be worse if we go up to 2.3 or 3.3. And then the global warming also trigger forest fires, and these services that were on fire. And you see that this circle, vicious circle, is being accelerated. Because of this vicious circle, we are losing the struggle. We are going to lose the struggle if we do nothing. In the 70s, CO2 increased 0.8 each year, plus 0.8, and since 5 years now, it is increasing by 2.4. And the CO2 in the atmosphere is increasing 3 times more quicker than in the 70s, and we are now halfway in the objectives of COP21. But I'm really pessimistic because we are not really doing very good. The FAO had predictions some years ago to say that we had a warming. Africa is a huge continent, but if there is a warming of more than 2 degrees, the crops will be divided by 40 or 50%. So can you imagine a warming of 2 or 4 degrees? So how can we react? According to the World Bank, there will be more than 140 million climate refugees and 90 million men and women in Africa that will have only the choice of dying or crossing the borders, and we can see how this can be done in a peaceful manner. This is why the Peace Nobel Prize of peace said that if we do not, we're not able to change our economies, we're heading to a major conflict. I was on strike, on hunger strike, some months ago, and the journalist said, "How come a European parliamentarian is on strike just to get money for the climate? Why are you doing so?" And I said, it is in Bamako that I had this idea in my mind, and I had just nightmares for many nights. And I believe that if we continue just talking, COP21, COP28, COP40, if we do not react, if we do not act, we will witness horror scenes, and we will realize that we have not been able to react. If we want to avoid major conflicts in 20 years, we need today to wage war against climate change. It is the only war that will not lead to one single death. It will reunite the peoples of the world. We need to wage war and win the war. We have been talking about financing in order to finance the loss and damage fund, and also to finance the finance in cooking for oil and reforestation, and to have common transports, green common transports, and to finance adaptation policies in the north and the south, and to help Lula and Marina Silva who want to stop deforestation. So for all these reasons, the key question, it's not the only one, is how to find the money. This is a crucial issue because since Copenhagen, there have been many promises that have not been honored, and now we need concrete responses. And frankly speaking, Europe, for 2 centuries now, is one of the biggest producers of CO2, and therefore Europe should go faster to reduce its CO2 production and help Africa and the South. The Loss and Damage Fund has been created at the end of COP27, but it is empty, and we need to find money to feed this fund. Another key question, do we need loans or subsidies? Many of our countries are over-indebted. We need money that is not going to be repaid or paid back. We need to have money that should be given, granted, because we need to help Africa.
Je vous l'enverrai à tous et toutes.
A very important report has listed 6 solutions to find money to finance this fund, money that should not be repaid, the digital tax, the carbon tax, etc. And the first solution, the most efficient one that can bring a lot of money everywhere, is the tax on financial transactions. And this has been said by all the MPs, and they said that this will bring about $5 billion, 57 million dollars per year. This is a very simple idea. Everybody pays VAT. When I bought my phone, I paid 90% VAT. And even in Europe, even the poorest persons should pay 5% VAT to be able to eat. But today, on the financial markets, is 0.0% of VAT for the financial markets, which is unprecedented. So this is really obscene, what is happening. When we see what is happening in the DRC, when you see people dying in Ethiopia, and where you are told that there is no money for the climate, whereas the financial markets have never been so rich. We have been taught that we are Homo sapiens, but we are wondering if we are only stupido because we are not able to properly orient and direct our money. Everything is ready. Everything is ready for this tax on financial transactions. Yesterday, I sent 1 hour. Some days ago, I spent 1 hour with an advisor of President Macron, and he said that all our European countries are in agreements. Only France that says that, yes, that is still hesitating about this. This is why the European Parliament voted on the 16th of February and said stop talking now. And the entire Parliament said that we need to have this tax created by the end of June. There will be a major summit on climate in Paris on the Loss and Damage Fund on the 22nd and 23rd of June, and the Parliament is asking to have this tax created before this summit. And if this tax is created in Europe this year, the money will come to Europe and Africa next year. This will not settle all the problems. We will have 57 billion, and we'll be able to tell Joe Biden in the U.S., are you doing the same? And we'll say to everybody that Europe did it. Are you able to do it? So as I said, we will have a summit on the 22nd and 23rd of June that will be chaired by Emmanuel Macron. And therefore, we need to exert pressure in order to obtain this tax. So 70% of European MPs are in agreement, but the lobby of banks are still resisting. I'm finishing in 2 minutes. It is the first step, but if we have this tax on financial transaction in Europe, we will be able to have an impact on all the European countries. We have voted 2 resolutions in the Parliament on the 7th of February and last week as well to tell that this is it is important to exert pressure to have this tax adopted. I've been also received by Pope Francois, who said that we need to make more efforts for social justice and climate justice as well. We need to have this tax of financial transactions. Antonio Guterres also said also that he is ready to help us to have this tax on financial transaction adopted. And this is because we need reconciliations. All these people are ready to help us. But what I would like from you is that the Pan-African Parliament next week votes a resolution. We have 2 resolutions from the European Parliament, but I'm here to invite you to vote a clear resolution to say, yes, it is high time for Europe to adopt this financial transaction tax in favor of the entire world. So I hope that the Pan-African Parliament will vote or will call for the adoption of this tax. And as I said, there will be a major summit in France, and the last the last summit in Rotterdam was a failure. The heads of state said they have been flying for hours, but that Macky Sall said that he just felt humiliated in Rotterdam because there was nothing was really done. Is it going to be another humiliation in the next COP? So we need. Everybody said that the heads of state should go to Paris. We might need a clash. We might need a shock, but we all say that if Emmanuel Macron says yes to the request of the European Parliament, we will say yes to his invitation and we'll go to Paris. But if Emmanuel Macron says no to the solution proposed by the European Parliament, and even if he proposes even a small tax, this is pointless. We do not want another humiliation, and the African heads of state have other things to do other than going to Paris for nothing. So we need to say very strongly that we are not going to Paris if there is no money on the table before the summit. So our children are looking at us, and we need to work together, endeavor together, because it is about the future of mankind here. And we need strongly to work together to make sure that in the coming months and years to act on the climate. It is on our territories that we have solutions, and Europe can provide finances. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Per Loroturo, from the rapporteur of the European Union. And we thank you very much for the brilliant presentation and for also showing the way you guys intend to solve these issues of climate change through tax and other funding mechanisms, which I think we can also look at as a continent. So now I think it's important that you mentioned that the African countries also, we can't just be going, like they said yesterday, we can't just be going to COP for the sake of going, but we need actions. And these are things that we really need. We must be action-oriented because we are not going there just for tourism or stuff like that, but we need to walk the talk so that we can do the needful. So we're going to bring this to a close now because we have to prepare for His Excellency, Honorable Ruto. That is actually coming here. So we need to just suspend this session for now so that we can prepare for His Excellency to come. Because there's some changes we need to do in the front here. So we want to thank you. So we're going to continue after after receiving His Excellency. Thank you very much for listening.
واحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Your Excellencies, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the guest of honor has arrived. He's in the holding room. He'll be entering the chamber shortly. We request that everybody should take a seat. When he enters the chamber, we will all rise. We will stay standing until the African Union anthem and the anthem of Kenya. The African Union anthem.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victor song for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, fils et filles de l'Afrique, chers soleil, chers du ciel, faisons de l'Afrique la brève de vie. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice on earth. Oh, filhos, filhas da África, essência do sol, essência do céu, façamos da África cor da vida.
Creation. May we live in unity, peace and liberty, plenty before within our borders. Let one and all arise. Let all strong and true. Service be our highest endeavor. And the homeland of Kenya, every Kenya's splendor, from where we stand to defend. Let all with one accord, in God united, build this our nation together, and the glory of Kenya, the fruit of our labor, fill every heart with thanksgiving.
Good morning. Good morning, Excellency, the President of Kenya. Good morning, the President of the Pan-African Parliament and all participants, Your Excellencies, For the first session, we'd like to invite Dr. Mitika Mwenda, the Executive Director of the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, to give a summary of the key deliberations for yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Chief Fortune Charubira, Excellency Josefa Sako, Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Economy, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Development of the African Union. Honorable Speaker King, I can see here, and other speakers, other honorable members from all over. All protocols observed, Your Excellency. This summit is hosted jointly by the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance and the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, PACJA, and brings together PAP members from across Africa. But beyond that, it also draws delegates from individual national assemblies, committees responsible for environment from all countries. Also with us are the delegates from parliaments of the regional economic integration communities, such as Economic Commission of West African States, Parliament of the Economic Commission for Central African States, East African Legislative Assembly, the SADC Parliamentarians Forum. There are also individual parliamentary networks, such as Pan-African Parliamentarians Network on Climate Change, associated with the African Caribbean Pacific Network of Parliamentarians, the Africa Climate Legislation Initiative, and the African Parliamentarians for Climate Action. As also I know you have, and were updated about the prevailing geopolitical context, defined by, in addition to the climate crisis, other lingering global crises such as COVID-19, which has disrupted everything, the way we do things, the biodiversity loss, the Russia-Ukraine war, skyrocketing food crisis, cost of living crisis, and the deepening debt crisis threatening to reverse all global efforts to eradicate poverty and achieve sustainable development. Throughout the day, delegates shared perspectives, exchanged ideas and experiences on the international climate policy processes, both in their countries and globally, and came to near consensus that a new paradigm is required to energize the conversations on climate change. It was observed that more than 3 decades of discussions under the auspices of UN Framework Convention on Climate Change have resulted into fatigue across the board, and many stakeholders are concerned about endless conferences, which have become more than a ritual, with predictable declarations, decisions, resolutions, communiques, call them whatever, which remain on paper without implementation. And 7 years after the historic Paris Agreement was adopted, the global stocktake moment informs us on whether we are on the right track or not. Delegates also expressed concerns about the disconnect that exists between the policy frameworks we adopt and their implementation. If we have been remaining faithful to all the decisions passed in COPs and other related processes, we should not be talking about the failure of policies or implementation. This year's theme of this summit, then, is a continent at the crossroads. That we are looking at graceful just transition and NDC's implementation responsive to African development aspirations and economic realities. It gives us a moment of pause and reflection in interrogating ourselves in whether it makes sense to make countless decisions, declarations, and commitments that just remain in paper. In many forums, Excellency, you have raised those issues. This is what thus brings us at the crossroads of development and the crossroads of balancing the same with the desire to combat climate crisis. Secondly, the crossroads of remaining in the current unsustainable modes of production and consumption, which has led us to where we are now, and adopting new development pathways that may have an impact on our growth pathways, but direct us towards zero carbon future and bequeath a habitable future to the generations to come. Then thirdly and final one is the crossroads of abandoning the vast fossil fuel resources underneath our soils, and the crossroads of exploiting the resources to power our people out of energy poverty and hunger. And Excellency, delegates were wondering whether then this summit, together with the African Climate Action Summit you will be hosting in Nairobi later in September, will join the catalogue of any other conferences laced with flowery resolutions only to just end as such declarations. The mood here is that there is general inertia in all global efforts to combat climate change, and a new way of doing things should be explored. Delegates are eager to hear from you as their leader, as the coordinator of the Committee of Heads of States and Governments on Climate Change, and we are very eager, Excellency. So for more than a decade, Excellency, since the demise of the founder chair of the KAUSK, the former Ethiopian Prime Minister Meles Zenawi in 2011, Africa has lacked a titular figure to rally around, reminiscent of the 2009 Copenhagen moment. And so, we are confident that the watershed moment provided by the ongoing global stocktake process and your emphatic invigoration of KAUSK rekindles that 2009 nostalgia, and your leadership will no doubt inspire all of us, men and women, the youth and the aged, smallholder farmers, parliamentarians, indigenous people, and everybody to rise to the occasion and contribute to our fair share in ensuring Africa becomes, yet again, a formidable force in shaping the future we desire, and an international climate change action framework that is responsive to the continent's aspirations and realities. More importantly, Excellency, we are keen on the agenda we have to tap into youth energy and innovation, and to that end, and as part of this momentum, we are hosting with universities across Africa undertaking to ensure that youth understands the intricacies of climate conundrum, and under the auspices of the Nairobi Summer School on Climate Justice, taking place at the Kenyatta University later in July, which has attracted more than 2,000 applicants from 72 countries across the world. We thus see you as a general in a battleground, and ourselves, anyone who is seated here, we are your foot soldiers. As you are brave, and we send President Charubira will be a colonel, and I will be, a lieutenant general. So, as you are brave soldiers, as PAGA and the PAP, together with regional parliaments and individual networks, PAP, NCC, and APCA, as well as other initiatives across the continents, will arm ourselves through PAP's clarion call of One Africa, One Voice as our ammunition. We have battalions of highly trained experts within our institutions and think tanks under the auspices of the Climate Change and Development for Africa, ClimDev Africa initiative, mandated by the Summit of Heads of States and Government of the African Union, which will back you with all analysis and the persuasions which you require. Fragmentation of our efforts based on regions, sectors, and language has remained Africa's biggest challenge to attain a strong voice in international climate dialogue processes. Our task is thus to ensure that, under your leadership, Africa speaks with one voice, and as we gather momentum towards the Africa Climate Action Summit, All delegates from this summit will and have committed to be champions of our clarion call in the assemblies, countries, and outreaches. Your Excellency, this is your session. It is not, ours was yesterday. And I don't want to take a very long time. These delegates are waiting in bated breath to hear from you. Allow me, however, to mention that the severity of the climate crisis, which has put our continent on the crossroad, highlights, among others, 5 things. Number 1, the need to uphold the primacy of adaptation as utmost priority for the African continent and its people, both as science demands and as an imperative of climate justice. 2, the need to ignite broad discussions on the global goal on adaptation, adequate finance for adaptation, and resilience building for communities at the front line of climate crisis. And you are very fond of Ursulas. These are real Ursulas on the ground. The need to strengthen the policy and legislative framework for climate action in Africa, and particularly adaptation and resilience building, drawing on the specificity of our context and the best practices and experiences of other regions and countries. Thirdly, the need to enhance the oversight and accountability functions of parliamentarians in monitoring and evaluating the implementation of policy framework and the commitments, both at the national and the continental levels, as well as ensuring that they are aligned with the respective countries' national sustainable development blueprints, the Paris Agreement, African Union's Agenda 2063, and the Agenda 2030 of the UN. The need to engage and empower local communities, especially women, youth, farmers, and other vulnerable groups who are most affected by climate change impacts and have valuable knowledge and solutions to offer. The need to seize the opportunity that climate change offers to transform our agricultural systems and the practices towards more sustainable and resilient models that can reduce emissions, enhance adaptation, and improve livelihoods. Finally, the need to strengthen strong collaboration with other non-state actors such as civil society, private sector, academia, and media to raise awareness and mobilize support to climate action, illustrated by this summit, which is hosted jointly between the 2 organizations. Before I sit down, Excellency, the delegates will want actually to interact with you, and I know you are a very free person. You will find that time within your busy schedule, and of course, the Bureau and the Secretariat said they will host you for lunch. I hope we will have time for that. Thank you very much, Excellency, and welcome.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, let me now take this opportunity to formally welcome you to Pan-African Parliament and also to this summit, which, as Dr. Mwenda said, was organized jointly between the Parliament and the organization he represents, which is Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. So I want to salute you. Thank you for coming. It is not easy. It is not easy to get a head of state. First of all, when you write to invite him, first of all, it's not easy to get him even to read the invitation. Sometimes he has no time to read the invitation. Sometimes when he reads the invitation, sometimes they even forget to reply. If they reply, most of the times it is unfortunately, we regret that the president will be very busy, he is unable to come. We are really proud of you since you took office. Proud of you. We hear a lot good things about you. And to have you in this chamber this morning is good for this continent. And it's very good for this continent. It's a topic that I've passionate a lot, that leaders should be accessible and responsive to their people and be able to carry out their responsibilities. That you are here is great for you as a president of Kenya. I know we are gathered for you to share with us, but I want to say, Your Excellency, we are told that this is the third time since 2009 where parliamentarians across the African continent meet to deliberate in this manner. But despite those 3 times of meetings, the issues of climate change have remained and grown more vicious, more painful, despite all the gatherings that have taken place, even at the global level, which we call COP, Conference of Parties. It means the parties have met 27 times as parties, but we have not moved much. Things are getting worse. And when I was talking to Dr. Mwenda, he says, Mr. President, when you speak, emphasize that we are at crossroads. I don't know how many roads are crossing, but I'm told crossroads. And I think he mentioned a bit about crossroads. But it is true whether we use the word crossroads or whether we say catastrophic, any other words, whether it's tragedies. It is true that this issue of climate change has haunted us and continue even to haunt us, and very excruciating for everybody. But we are not moving forward. We are glad you are the champion. And the champion, of course, the advantage, sometimes I speak freely, it is part of me. You see, we are lucky. Look at the champion. He's not a tired champion. He's not a tired champion. Look at him. Full of energy. It means it's really promising. We have a lot of hope in you. Very, very sharp, energetic president. I want to share a secret. I said sometimes I speak freely. I want to share a secret about him, which I just saw last night when we received him from the airport. And then when we started for briefing, the Speaker of the Kenyan Senate, who seated here, when he just said, we had the president of Comoros yesterday, Monday. And Your Excellency, he said to me, please, when your president, the Kenyan president, arrives yesterday, please tell him that I want to invite him to Comoros for the Independence Day so that he can officiate Independence Day. And the president, not typical of most presidents, says, right, what the date? 6th July. Check my diary. How is 6th July? Just like that. Just like that. 6th July, can you check my calendar? And then the diary, and then Later on, this gentleman, whom I believe is a top assistant to the president, says, President, 6th July is okay. Then the president says to the speaker, tell the president of Comoros, I'll be there on the 6th of July. That is the simplicity, flexibility, action-oriented, result-oriented leadership we need in Africa. I will not go into technicalities about climate change, but only to support that definitely where we are going into more disaster. That's why we are gathered here, to find some solutions. And the only point that I want to emphasize, Your Excellency, is Africa has a problem of unity on issues across the globe. That's the problem of Africa. Very intelligent people on the continent. Professors, doctors, what. But they operate somewhere in silos. Unless we become united, and that unity needs a platform. Your Excellency, Article 17 in the establishment of the Constitutive Act establishing Pan-African Parliament says there shall be a Parliament of Africa which shall provide a platform to the citizens of the continent on all issues affecting the continent, including economic development, social, whatever, everything. Now, here is climate change. And in terms of the Constitutive Act of the Union, this is the most appropriate platform to come together as Africa and talk about climate change issues. Any other gatherings we've heard about have been weak because they don't have that mandate of the Union itself. This forum is mandated by the Union, of which is led by the Assembly of Heads of State, of which when you are here, you are representing the Assembly of Heads of State. So we are within the structure of the continent to address issues of climate change. We want to be a force, and after this, we want to work with you, Pan-African Parliament, and Dr. Mwenda's Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, and the other stakeholders in this room, so that we move forward. We move to September, as you said, let's move to September. We understand there's a Paris thing in between. We don't know much about it, but if you invite us, we'll come there. But when we come to September and then to Dubai, we want Dubai this year, that's COP28, to be visited and host a great force from Africa because of this summit and what will follow. As I said, I do not want to go too far. We now have leadership on the continent on the issue of climate change. Proper leadership in you. You are the champion, you are now the leader of climate change. And on this note, I've already told you the personality and the person sitting there. A very energetic, action-oriented president, simple president, very accessible. And yesterday when we went to the hotel, his lodging, and we were going to meet in a bigger room for briefing. And the room had almost 20. Then he went to his special lounge and he asked me and the ambassador to go and meet him and leave the rest first. So when we were going to his private room, I had someone who I said is PAP advisor to me. So before we entered, security said, it's only you, Chief President. No one else to accompany you. I said, but I need someone to write my notes. He said, no, it's only you and the speaker and the ambassador. When I got in, I sat, I said, Mr. President, you know, these people refused my advisor to come in. I said, let him come in, let him come in. Even if how many are there, they can say, oh, you have one. Let him come in. Now, that is the type of president we also look for in Africa. And I now call upon His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, President William Ruto, to deliver his speech. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please, let's take our seats. Thank you very much. I appreciate. Your Excellency, Chief Fortune Churambira, the President of the Pan-African Parliament, the Vice Chairs of the Pan-African Parliament, distinguished members of this august assembly, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to join you today at the opening session of this year's Pan-African Parliament. And before I proceed, I must take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the President of the Republic of South Africa for the generous reception that my delegation and I received on arrival at this beautiful country and the warm hospitality that we have enjoyed throughout our stay. Our bonds of African fraternity and solidarity continue to grow stronger and deeper. The Pan-African Parliament is a critical organ of the Africa Union, whose full institutional potential is going to become manifest as we rally to formulate effective and sustainable solutions to the tremendous cries confronting our people and humanity in general. This Parliament rises higher and goes further than the sum of its legislative, representative, and oversight mandate for Africa. It provides a fundamental deliberative forum where the peoples of Africa gather to reason exhaustively together and develop African solutions to Africa's problems. This assembly is the august crucible where the full range of African voices, the diversity of African ideas, and the variety of African insights interact and generate the principles and knowledge that we need to inform our endeavors to give present and future generations a prosperous and a secure Africa, together with a livable planet. I therefore congratulate all of you for the confidence you have clearly inspired to be chosen as the African people's representatives in this Parliament. You take your seats in this House at a very critical time for Africa and the world. The world is presently confronted with a daunting array of multifaceted challenges, which range from the pandemic recovery to the existential threat of climate change. There is also the prevailing adverse financial environment characterized by increasing interest rates and looming debt distress affecting Africa and the many other regions, not forgetting the complex security implications of a delicate geopolitical crisis. At this time, your leadership as members of this House is more vital than ever to guide and support all other institutions of the African Union in pursuit of a new, ambitious, and inspiring vision. It is a time to be bold, to be strong and resolute enough to confront these challenges with greater unity and greater commitment. It is time to extend our forefathers' Pan-African dream into a brave new world in order to bequeath the people of Africa and our future generations a much better, more secure, and prosperous Africa that plays its role. And we are the continent of young people, hungry for better life and a clear role in the world affairs. Unfortunately, however, the discursive profile of the continent has too often been focused on the challenges and the difficulties we face and the assistance we need in a way that depicts us as chronically subordinate, eternally vulnerable, and perpetually incapable. As a consequence, an emerging psychology of victimhood implicates both African and global leadership in a politics of pity and helplessness. It also denies the world's youngest continent, repository of unparalleled abundance, the agency to articulate appropriate solutions for its own problems and to offer its unique, indispensable contribution on the broader global stage. I am persuaded that our generation of African leaders has the historic mandate to retire this unhelpful profile and in its place articulate a more accurate and compelling portrait of Africa that is both faithful to fact, yet also developmentally inspirational. Through this fundamental shift, we have the opportunity to empower and mobilize our people to drive transformation, attract investment, and inspire partnerships and collaborations across the world. I see a tremendously decisive role for yourselves as members of the Pan-African Parliament, since you represent the voices of Africans on all issues pertaining to every sphere and sector of individual and collective endeavor. Please don't let us down. The need to urgently undertake fundamental shift in understanding Africa's global role is overwhelming evidence on the subject of climate change. At the moment, conversations about climate change in Africa focus on the fact that Africa's contribution to global greenhouse gas emissions is minimal, at between 3% and 4%, yet the impact of consequent climate change on our people is huge. This discourse also mainly focuses on the questions of compensation for loss and damage and funding for adaptation, mitigation, and resilience. This focus on matters that are clearly urgent tend to dominate and obscure the equally imperative matter of radical economic transformation. I consider rapid economic growth to be indispensable to the achievement of stable and dignified livelihoods for all, as well as the creation of lasting resilience. At the same time, I worry about the mainstream perspective where prosperity is often regarded, ironically, as incompatible with environmental sustainability and relegated to the margins of global agenda for Africa. I will explain this a bit later. As a matter of fact, many Africa's global partners evasively skirt around this necessary conversation, making it difficult and uncomfortable. Explicitly and implicitly, they encourage Africa to focus on managing the consequences of climate change, since only others in the global north are understood to possess the capacity to solve the global problems of such character and magnitude. This unjust dynamic is unnecessary, inappropriate, and only serves to hold us back from fulfilling our potential. Good people, let me ask you, who said that Africa cannot be part of the solution? That when Africa is being discussed, it's only being discussed in the context of the problems. And our voices are limited to, oh no, you are victims of climate change. We will help you to manage situation. We will manage you to deal with adaptation. We will look for some little money for mitigation. We do not want to be in that corner. We want to be in the conversation about the solutions. And we have what it takes. And shortly, I will be proposing to you why I consider that, in fact, the reason why we have been in a circus for all these years, it's because we as Africans have not stepped forward with our capabilities to provide the solution to this challenge of climate change. As the chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Governments on Climate Change, I fully associate myself with the consensus that has evolved among Africa's leaders who have refused to be tethered to this unsatisfactory ideology. Instead, we have been pushing a fresh, affirmative, and solution-oriented perspective. And I have come here today to ask you to join us in executing this change of course, articulating a fundamentally Pan-African principle and amplifying new ethos that summons the world to live, produce, and consume in harmony with nature that will be spearheaded by Africa. The single most important priority commitment that will propel Africa to lasting security, sustainable stability, and shared prosperity is an opportunity-oriented focus on climate change. Our continent's abundant wealth of natural resources, immense endowments of untapped green renewable energy, our youthful demographic profile, and our increasingly enlarging market precisely constitute the fundamental elements required to mitigate and then reverse climate change while driving a new green industrial revolution. Africa's untapped renewable energy, let me give you some numbers. Africa's untapped renewable energy potential is more than 50 times the world's cumulative demand by 2030. The continent's untapped solar, wind, and geothermal potential is rated as super abundant in most African countries, meaning the potential is over 1,000 times the current demand. Yet, nearly 600 million Africans lack access to electricity, while another 150 million have highly unreliable access, and a whopping 900 million Africans have no access to clean cooking energy. Just imagine the paradox that we are in the middle of plenty while living in scarcity. The primary cause of Africa's minimal investment in exploiting its abundant green energy potential is the lack of energy-intense anchor demand. Such demand would make investment in additional energy generation capacity bankable and render universal energy access possible. Scientists tell us that achieving the net zero emissions by 2050 is imperative to sustain human civilization. Failure to reach this target will lead to devastating and irreversible impacts on ecosystems, weather patterns, and sea levels. At present rates, it will be extremely difficult, if not altogether impossible, for the world's industrial nations and fast-growing emerging economies to achieve net zero goals on time. The only way for the world to achieve this net zero aspiration by 2050 is for countries which presently have net negative emissions, as we do in most of Africa. And I really want you to listen to me on this point, because this is the turning point. The only way for the world to achieve the net zero aspiration by 2050 is for countries which presently have net negative emissions, as we do in most of Africa, to make up for those on course to missing the 2050 goal. The implication of this scenario is that African countries are uniquely positioned to limit own emissions and at the same time contribute reductions everywhere. We are not only in a position that we can limit our own emissions, but we can assist others. We can contribute to the reduction by others. The opportunity, therefore, exists to provide energy access for all Africans by 2030, while reducing total emissions from energy generation by creating green industrial capacity in Africa, thus positioning the continent to support the global net zero ambition. The clearest path is to relocate global industrial production capacity to Africa and therefore meet Africa's as well as world's growing demand for goods and services. Let me take that again, so that we are clear. The clearest path available to humanity, not just to us, available to humanity, is to relocate global industrial production capacity to Africa and therefore meet Africa's as well as the world's growing demand for goods and services in a green-first manner that also enables the continent to leapfrog the industrial development path taken by the global north. An African green industrial capacity will not only serve global demand, but it will also decarbonize global production, thereby fulfilling humanity's most ambitious climate goals. This is the very honest conversation we want to have. We are saying we can have a win-win in this engagement. We do not have to engage in the usual finger pointing. You caused this, you did not cause that. That's all fine. We contributed the least, that's fine. We are suffering the most, that's okay. but we can together agree on a solution that carries everybody. And that is the proposition we are having as the leadership of this continent. We are not selfish. We are willing to share, to present our resources so that we can not only solve our problem, but we can solve the global problem of climate change. Let me tell you more. For the first time in history, low or no emission production processes for products like steel, fertilizer, and hydrogen are technically feasible and economically efficient, thanks to Africa's abundant renewable energy potential. Moreover, primary processes of essential ores present a major opportunity for Africa to effectively balance its energy and climate ambition. Africa has 30 to 40% of the world's minerals, including those on which the green energy transition depends. The availability of these significant deposits makes a compelling case for Africa to be a global hub for manufacturing. For example, the simple decision to process the 80 million tons of iron ore annually exported by Africa to Europe and China, and to process steel from plants close to mines in Africa averts the emission of nearly 7 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in just 1 year. Processing over 110 million tons of bauxite exported annually from Africa to Europe and Asia at aluminum factories near the mines using renewable energy can also avoid between 1.3 and 1.5 gigatons of carbon dioxide every year, which is 3% of all global house gas emissions. What am I saying? I am saying instead of exporting the iron ores and the bauxite to be processed in Europe and China, if the decision was reversed so that we still get the same steel, but this time round, it is processed in Africa, you don't have to transport the ores. Use the renewable energy in Africa instead of the fossil fuel and carbon energy in Europe. It is a simple decision. We will still get the steel for everybody, but let's change the paradigm. Instead of transporting iron ore and engaging in huge footprints of carbon, let us process the iron ores and the bauxite in Africa. And we are willing, once it is processed in Africa, we will sell the steel to our friends. We will do two things. We will have created jobs in our continent. We will have done green for everybody, green industrialization for everybody. We will have reduced emissions for everybody. And we will have contributed to solving this big equation of carbon emissions. It is as simple as that. It is just as simple as that. You don't need any rocket science to, it is just as simple as it gets. Let me give you an example from Kenya. Kenya is a perfect case in point. Our comparatively small national grid is about 3 gigawatts, but consists of 92% renewable energy. We aspire to make our grid 100% renewable by 2030, in the next 8 years, while executing a quantum leap in grid size to 100 gigawatts and 100% renewable by 2040. The small grid size and relatively high energy cost, production cost that is in the past made it hard to attract energy-intense industry to Kenya. By recognizing the need to develop industrial anchor demand and shaping our plans accordingly, we have prioritized green industrialization and now aim to make carbon credits one of Kenya's biggest export products. In a month, we will have completed the institutional and legal framework for us to access, manage, and participate in the carbon market space. For the record, all the carbon trading in the African continent, let me say, 25% at the moment is happening in Kenya. I want to encourage us as a continent that is the future. And the legislators here from different parliaments in our continent must carry this back home. To support this, we are working on the appropriate institutional framework to anchor carbon market regulation, align fiscal incentives, and a green investor-friendly environment that ensures communities benefit as businesses also flourish. We are therefore organizing and building our internal government capacity accordingly. And I dare say every other government, every other parliament must begin to internalize and to work along this line. The same will be true for our food production. As the world embraces regenerative agriculture, we recognize that our agricultural practices largely comply with the new approach. We must therefore commit to apply productive technologies driven by renewable energy, such as solar-powered irrigation, along with resilient seed varieties, to increase our yields and farming in climate-smart ways to generate soil health and additional carbon revenues. It is essential to point out the additional benefits of relocating industrial production to Africa in terms of strengthening our balance of trade, ease pressure on our currencies, and mitigating the vulnerability arising out of dependency on capricious supply chains, as is the case in our fertilizer supply. Case in point is what happened in Ukraine and Russia. We have all it takes to grow our industries and make Africa the clean, green factory of the world. My call today is for us to do so in a way that is green from the start, so as to capitalize on the exclusive competitive advantage we have. No other continent has the advantage that we have as a continent. Another major opportunity for the continent is in carbon removal using hybrid solutions, including nature-based and technological solutions. Our continent has the potential to remove over 300 million tons of CO2 per year through nature-based solutions such as landscape restoration, reforestation, and mangrove forest protection and expansion. These measures, at a carbon price of $50 per ton, could provide in excess of $15 billion in revenue, create more than 85 million jobs, and improve millions of livelihoods. Of course, I am well aware that the prices we currently get on average are $5 per ton. It is unacceptably unfair given that everywhere else prices go up to between $100 and $200 per ton. That's the conversation we need to have. We need a carbon market that has integrity. And this way, we wouldn't be asking for money for debt. We wouldn't be asking for debt relief. We wouldn't be begging for grants and aid. We will be making a positive contribution to humanity and earning out of the assets of our continent. Regarding engineered solutions, Kenya startups are exploring the use of the Rift Valley geological formations for mineralized storage to replicate the success reported elsewhere in geologically comparable landscapes, such as in the Iceland. If you can generate carbon credits in Iceland, we can also generate carbon credits from the fissures in the Rift Valley. Market and market access are issues of cardinal significance as we articulate growth strategies centered on green development opportunities in our continent. We must also establish enabling policies and regulations that foster incentives to make Africa an attractive destination for the growing pool of global capital seeking climate positive opportunities. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is a major step in the right direction to the extent that it seeks to enhance trade within the continent and presents the continent as one large trading area. It is absolutely essential to set up a sound global regime of trade and market with robust incentives for low-emission production of goods and services with lower emissions. Such a framework would position Africa as the world's most competitive industrial, investment, and trade destination. I wish to direct your attention, to the European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism and the potential negative impact it will have on African exports. I hope some of you are aware of this mechanism. Our exports are produced in older and smaller industrial facilities that are not managed to minimize emissions compared to their European counterparts. The EU's mechanism is transmitting the most emphatic demand signal and lays down a set of incentives that make low-emission production competitive. This is exactly what Africa can offer through transition. Instead of looking at it as a barrier, we should change it and make it a bridge. We have a responsibility to ensure that global carbon markets maintain the highest standards of integrity to most efficiently channel benefits and rewards to communities that do the hard work of protecting and expanding carbon sinks or innovating new ways to avoid or permanently remove greenhouse gases. Our international partners must provide market access and make the right kind of capital available to invest in our potential. On finance and capital, at the Paris Agreement, as well as earlier in Copenhagen in 2009, it had been agreed that developed countries would make available US $100 billion every year for developing countries. Disappointingly, as expected, the amount has never materialized. As a result, this figure has become increasingly contentious and divisive in every other conference. By contrast, I invite you to consider the Global Finance Alliance for Net Zero, which was launched in COP26 in Glasgow. The alliance unites nearly 600 financial institutions. And I'm told there is a good gentleman who has made a presentation to us from the European Union. The alliance unites nearly 600 financial institutions who have jointly invested US $4 billion in energy transition towards net zero, an amount that African investment opportunities we've hardly had tapped into. This variety of capital that is out in search of green investment opportunities is tapping into a rapidly growing global demand. Other regions appreciate this opportunity and are charging ahead. For example, the United States Inflation Reduction Act provides nearly $370 billion in tax incentives and government spending towards clean energy and climate technology. The EU has made US $1 trillion available for the European Green Deal over and above new trade rules under the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism that make importers pay for the embedded carbon in their products. The planet simply cannot afford to channel a paltry 0.6% of renewable investment in Africa at a time when the continent is home to over 40% of the planet's best renewable energy resources. Our statistics on sustainability, efficiency, and green compliance are outstanding. I mentioned earlier that we can create energy access for all by 2030 while reducing total emissions related to energy generation by at least 80% and emissions per megawatt hour by well over 90% with only 30% investment. However, it entails a 40% higher upfront investment than the current policy pathway. If Africa is to be the green industrial powerhouse of the world, and there is no foreseeable alternative, much more investment has to be made available collectively by humanity. This position aligns very closely with the ongoing discussion in Bridgetown Initiative, which I am sure many of you are aware, whose principles, achievements, and aspirations we must applaud. A decision in line with the Bridgetown call for action to channel a greater proportion of global finance to emerging and frontier economies and link it closely with climate action would make necessary concessional capital available to de-risk and attract private investment. This is precisely the outcome that decades of economic distress and underdevelopment of the global South deserves and must have. Moreover, as the global financial reform movement considers debt restructuring, the sustainability of debt relief is a major shared concern. Many of the countries in debt distress benefited from debt relief according to the highly indebted poor countries in the 90s. It is clear, therefore, that debt relief did not automatically usher in significant economic growth. In fact, it didn't achieve much. To liberate economies from this vicious circle, positive growth that is sensitive to climate and biodiversity agenda is needed. This is growth that builds on all our assets. African countries possess inherent competitive potential to emerge as clean, green, global manufacturing hubs. And that's the unique position we have. Instead of all the games being played, all we need to do, we are telling the world, we have our assets, we are willing to have a win-win engagement. We have the largest green energy potential, resources. The world has no choice. We cannot continue the fossil fuel-fired industrialization. It has to change. All we are saying is we are coming with our assets, come with investment and technology, we meet halfway, and everybody wins. That's all we are saying. We are tired of complaining. We are tired of being victims. We want to be part of the solution. Don't consign Africa to the margins of problems and being victims and managing adaptation. We have better proposals that can get all of us out of the quagmire that we are all in. A critical growth opportunity that can be the starting point for our intentional efforts in pursuit of our aspiration is fiscal space arising from both debt restructuring and blended capital, combined with economic growth that increases tax revenues and positions African countries to invest more in adaptation and resilience. Once we have a win-win, once we are making money, once we are engaged in economic activity, we can take care of the adaptation. We can take care of resilience. Don't bring resilience into the equation to fool anybody that we are going to get anywhere with money for adaptation. You know, we are managing a problem. We want to be part of the solution. Don't consign us to managing a problem. I submit to you, in this esteemed assembly, my good friends, that by taking these measures with a degree of both urgency and resolve, Africa's leaders can energize our economies and inspire the people with a new vision centered on investment and growth, which is in harmony with our planet. In doing so, our generation will have discharged a tremendous historic developmental mandate while realizing our common global ambition to arrest and ultimately reverse climate change. We will also make it possible for our economies to meet the needs and fulfill the hopes of a young workforce, which grows at an annual rate of about 30 million young people in our continent, requiring us to generate millions of decent jobs every year. Your work, honorable members, therefore, is clearly cut out, and your assignment very well defined. By facilitating robust and continuous discourse on the broadest cross-section of Africa, this Parliament will simultaneously employ the federative transmission of ideas from discrete grassroots agencies to the global and continental, multilateral, and intergovernmental fora, and at the same time engage the devolutionary mechanisms of domesticating global standards and international norms. Although the theme of this session is the African continent at crossroads, our discussion has enlarged our field of deliberation to encapsulate possibilities that transcend our defining dilemma of past decades. For a while, Africa has struggled with an implied trade-off between economic growth and prosperity on one hand, and environmental sustainability on the other. We can now agree that given the transitional imperative, it is possible for Africa to execute clean, green industrialization that can enable the rest of the world attain the net zero target as well. We finally have the answer to the dilemma, and with it, our way out of the thematic crossroads. Simply, Africa is the answer. We don't have to be at the crossroads. If Africa is indeed the young green continent of the future and the locus of the next industrial revolution, Africa's solutions are no longer restricted to Africa's problems. They also address humanity's problems effectively, global problems effectively. So we can confidently say that African solutions can actually provide global solutions. Aspirations often come with a problem of implementation. The concept paper contains a statement that I approved unreservedly. A sound policy framework should begin with formulation and end with implementation. But worldwide policy development is frequently prioritized without regard for performance. Our development partners tend to focus more on providing resources for policy development rather than implementing the policies. This situation has resulted in heaps of policy documents gathering clouds of dust on the shelves of government offices. As legislators, you are mandated not only to formulate law and policy, but also to rigorously oversee their implementation. To ensure that the African Union performs at the level of its aspirations, it will be necessary for you, as legislators, representatives, and overseers, to make sure that it empowers itself with sufficient capacity. Otherwise, African solutions, Agenda 2063, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the young, clean, green continent of the future will remain a mere pipe dream. I want to persuade you. The power you enjoy today is delegated to you. The authority you enjoy today is delegated to you by the people of our continent. And let me remind you that the authority that you wield comes with responsibility. And responsibility comes with accountability. Our Africa Union, we have to rethink the architecture, the governance structure of our Africa Union. This parliament must provide the accountability mechanisms to make sure that all the structures of the Africa Union ultimately are answerable to the people of this continent. It is completely against the principles of accountability to have an impotent parliament. A parliament that cannot approve the budget of our organization. A parliament that cannot hold to account the executives in our administration is not the kind of parliament the people of Africa envisaged, is not the kind of parliament our forefathers envisaged when constituting our union. Let me also say the following, that as nations, the whole reform agenda around the AU is a necessary imperative. It is not possible for us as states, as governments, to hold all the power and expect the African Union to function. We must be courageous enough, we must be bold enough to delegate some of the powers of our nations to the collective body of the African Union. That is what other progressive unions have done. It is not possible for us to continue to engage with the rest of the world the way we are doing. The budget of Africa Union, to a good extent, is funded by development partners. What does it say about our ability to make our own decisions? It is said he who pays the piper calls the tune. As things stand today, and I say this with tremendous respect, the Africa Commission Chair, the Africa Union Commission Chair, does not have what it takes to prosecute the agenda for our continent. We still hold all the power as heads of state and expect the union to function. It cannot function. We have to donate some of the power to the collective authority of the union. I had occasion, let me explain to you something. I had occasion a few weeks ago to talk with the German Chancellor. And he was explaining to me how Germany has donated matters trade, matters investment to the European Union. And they have immensely benefited by working together as 27 governments, 475 million people. In our continent, we still want to keep all the powers in our little corners. How are we going to negotiate with EU as a country? How are you going to negotiate? And this is the candid conversation we must have. The Pan-African Parliament must operate at the same level as the European Parliament. If we have to engage with the European Union on a platform as equals, how does a country with 10, 20 million people engage with the European Union with 500 million people on equal footing? Is that a reality? We just must be honest to ourselves. The globe is acting in concert. We cannot afford not to act together. Good people, this is my request to you. And our organization must begin to internalize accountability. If you want to wield power, if you want to wield authority, you must be ready to be held to account. Otherwise, you have no business. And the organization to hold the Africa Union to account is this parliament. So what am I saying? For example, let me give you another example. We have been to US Africa. We have been to some other engagement with other countries. Now we have been invited for Russia-Africa summit. We have made a decision, very respectfully as heads of state in Africa, that any engagement with other partners must be an engagement of equals. And for it to be meaningful, if we are going to meet the president of a country, we have organized ourselves that the Troika is going to represent Africa. The chair, the current chair, the past chair, the chair that is coming, and the heads of our regional economic commissions, about 6, 7 people. But what happens? Continuously, when others want to engage with us, they don't want to deal with a troika. They want to invite 50 heads of state. So we go to a meeting, just explain to me what kind of outcome you expect where 50 heads of state are sitting. Everybody is asked for speak to 1.5 minutes. You speak to for 1.5 minutes. What kind of engagement are you going to get? You're going to get nothing, right? the best that you get is photographs. That's it. Precisely. You get these photographs, they normally line us up somewhere, crowd of 50 heads of state. And that's all we come home with, because there isn't time to engage any serious country that wants to engage with Africa, must respect first our architecture. If we have said we are going to be represented by the Troika, why are you inviting 50 people unless you want to sabotage the whole discussion? And if you can't respect our own rules, it is a sign of lack of goodwill. I mean, you must, so that when we engage, if we have a smaller group of 5 people, then you can have a meaningful conversation. And we can have a meeting of equals. But here you are, you represent 200-300 million people. You have a guy here who represents 10 people. You have another guy who represents 10 million people. Then that conversation becomes, and some of the time, the most unfortunate thing is that some of the people who invite us to these meetings tell us, if you don't come, there will be consequences. So all of us are forced to go to a meeting that has no meaningful outcome because of blackmail. This is not right, good people. This is not okay. So I have written to my brother who was here the other day that this time round, any other invitation, it must respect the rules of our continent. We have said any meaningful engagement, anybody who wants us to take them seriously, they must first respect our architecture. If they want a fruitful engagement, they should engage our continent in a manner that we can effectively represent our people and we can effectively discharge our mandate and articulate our issues, not in a crowd. We want to be effective. We want to engage. So if you are one head of state and you want to engage all these people, surely are you sincere? In engaging in a crowd. Because some of these good people, they want to avoid any commitments, They want to avoid any meaningful engagement. They just want a baraza and okay, pictures, and then we go. Dinner, and then... I mean, good people, we have food in our countries, at least. We can eat at home. The Africa Union reform agenda must therefore become a priority this session. And you must, members of parliament, you must interrogate and conduct the process to ensure that structurally the roles of the Bureau, Summit, committees, regional caucuses, Secretariat, and Commission are rationalized to give Africa a fit-for-purpose continental governing body worth its name. To do so, this Honorable Assembly must urgently review the funding arrangements to ensure that Africa Union budgets are financed primarily by members and secondarily by external partners. In turn, this will require a mechanism where African Union member states are up to date with their contributions with regard to all our commitments. As matters stand, our most core mandates depend on the goodwill of development partners. Just imagine, including critical peace and security matters, that our own Peace and Security Fund is funded by development partners more than is funded by us as heads of state and countries. Good people, this needs to change. Africa's solutions must look like solutions. And in principle, they ought to emanate from us. How do we say we are providing African solutions if it is funded by development partners? It's a fallacy. It means we have no capacity to provide Africa solutions if it is being funded by others. A case in point, we have a situation in Sudan. The generals in Sudan are bombing everything. They are bombing roads, they are bombing bridges, they are bombing hospitals, they are destroying airports, using military hardware bought by African money. Just imagine. We need to tell those generals to stop the nonsense. Yeah. Military capacity is for fighting criminals and terrorists. It is not for fighting children and women and destroying our own infrastructure. But as it is, we have no capacity to stop this nonsense in our own continent because our own Peace and Security Fund is funded by others. We have a problem. But I'm telling you, we are going to correct this problem. It is us to do it. Let me also tell you that I think we're going to have a new, and we need your help. You know, we need your support. You must take up your role. You know, you must take up your role and make sure that our executive, the people running the Africa Union, are held to account. With this vision in mind, I sought and was privileged to receive the approval of the African Heads of State and Government Summit to have the honor of hosting the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi this year in September. This will be a major gathering of African and global leaders to deliberate and consolidate a clear African position and clear African voice as we project our agenda in the global stock-take engagements and the build-up to COP28. The summit also provides an opportunity to highlight and forge consensus on the modalities of unlocking Africa's vast potential to positively impact the climate agenda and rally the world to tap into the numerous opportunities that Africa presents towards global net zero. This will not be another morning summit where we are mourning about our situation. We are going to boldly tell the world we will contribute positively to a solution, and we have what it takes. I invite you all to Nairobi to join us at that summit and to take part in that broader journey and vision. For Africa to hold meaningful discussions with global partners, I have told you, Africa heads of state and governments have resolved that partnership summits by external parties shall be reviewed with a view to providing an effective framework for African Union partnerships. And we are going to work together in that manner. Another proposition I want to make to you is the United Nations. This is an important forum for transacting global affairs in diplomacy, peace, security, and trade, among others. But Africa, a continent of 1.2 billion people and a GDP of close to $2 trillion, finds itself disadvantaged by the current configuration of the UN Security Council, a configuration that was established 80 years ago, before the Second World War. But the world has since changed tremendously, we all know. Countries that had not become self-determining have since attained independence and are making a huge contribution to their people, continents, and the world. It is therefore time to reform the UN Security Council and change it from an exclusive club of 5 permanent members to a more representative global council that works for the interests of the whole world. We have said Africa must have, at the minimum, 2 permanent seats at the Security Council. And by the way, we are being very modest. Yeah, we are being very modest because we are understanding. We must therefore work together to make our continent prosperous. For that is what it deserves, and our people now and generations to come, and improve our relations with global business and global investments. One final thing that I want to, I know many of you have talked about Paris. Yes, we will be going to Paris because we want to occupy every space. We are going to be consistent. We are going to be coherent. We are going to be audible until there is no place to hide. Yeah? Until the conferences are stopped. Otherwise, we will make them noisy, we will make them messy, and there will be consequences. If we are not heard, we are refusing to stay on the margins anymore. Yeah? We want to be at the table. Because we are told the risk of not being at the table is that you could be in the menu. Do you understand? So we are going to occupy every space. And we have been gentlemen for far too long. We are now going to appropriate our place because we have a contribution to make. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. I don't take it for granted. And God bless you.
Thank you.
What do we want? Climate justice. What do we want?
Climate justice.
What do we want? Climate justice. What do we want? Climate justice. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. Thank you.
I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. Hey! Hey, 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 hey. Your Excellency, Your Excellency, I am standing here saying, what can I say? Nothing but to just thank you, nothing more. Just thank you. Hey. Yeah. Yeah. At one point, I could see 80% seated and wondering, looking at you like this, wondering whether this is coming from a president of this continent. People have always wanted to hear what you say, but they don't hear it. You know, you spoke as if you were this side, not this side. Look, 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 look. You have propelled Africa to another higher level. I tell you, we now have gained confidence in our leadership on this continent. We really have confidence. We now have hope. And those that are aspiring, because this parliament has produced, as we said yesterday, a number of heads of state from this parliament. The current president of Seychelles was here 2 years ago. The current president of Namibia was a member of this parliament. Former President Mahama of Ghana was a member of this parliament. Former President of Mali, Keita, was a member of this parliament. Who else? So, now today, Niger president, Niger, Bazoum, Honorable Bazoum, he used to sit over there, that side. Bazoum, former member of this parliament. But I want to say, if there are others among you who are also aspiring, I think twice. It is no longer the presidents of yesterday. Things have changed. Look, we now want this caliber. This is the caliber now we are looking for. So you may have to withdraw your candidature. Anyway, if you listened properly, and all of you listened, this can be a speech, a talk, but in my language of academic life, this is not a speech. It is a treatise which lives forever. Treatise of philosophers, and we're going to read today. Those who have been recording, whether video, whatever form, as I sat there, I said, this speech has to be produced in all our 5 languages. And I am serious, we have to do it and share it with all the members and all the participants. Because this is a treatise, you know, a treatise. It's written for the next centuries. So we want everybody to have a copy in their home and share with their own children. And share with the parliamentarians up there in our national parliaments. Make them read this. That's the only way Africa can improve. But you want also to agree with me on something. My own capacity to identify quality, competent leaders. Yes. want to thank the people of Kenya. I want to thank the people of Kenya. I thank you for giving us this gift. We can change Africa with this leadership. We can change Africa. The AU, we want, as he said, fit for purpose. Is the African Union fit for purpose? Have AU fit for purpose? Now, he's our champion on the climate, but we want to make him double champion. Double champion, also champion for Pan-African Parliament. He said, do not consign Africa to managing problems. These are quotable quotes that you should have forever. Quotable quotes. Now, and those crossing roads, he removed them, he straightened them. We are no longer crossing roads. He was very clear as to why we have roads that are crossing. Now we move forward properly. Your Excellency, in Nigeria, when we had elections this year, the point that you made, that we relegate ourselves to nothing in our own continent. Election observers, the European Parliament sent 200, if not 350 observers to Nigeria. We as a union, including Pan-African Parliament, we sent 50. 50 only. These are the issues that they are saying, no, these are anomalies on this continent. Can we... Now, you spoke very well about this parliament and whether the union is doing well. The protocol and the rules of this parliament, functions of this parliament, it says, facilitate the implementation of the policies, objectives, and the programs of the union, and oversee their effective implementation by the various organs of the union. If we ask the union, is this being done? No. Why? Because, one, there is no budget for this to pop. Nothing. Two, some people in the... Okay, now. Do we have translation? Interpretation? Thank you. I was saying to His Excellency, in effect, the protocol says we should do it, exactly what you said, oversee implementation, but it is not happening. And because now we are saying we're a champion of PAP, we have to go together and look at why these things are not happening. I will not read everything, but it also says participate in creating awareness among the peoples of Africa on issues of objectives and policies of the Union. Interpretation not coming through French. French? French? It's okay now? So we are supposed to look at strengthening the continent, solidarity, cooperation, integration. We are supposed to also to look at the promotion of peace, security, and stability on the continent, among other recovery strategies. I want to read this one, I'm skipping others. Examine and debate the budget of the African Union and make recommendations thereon. In simple, the Union refuses to do this. Addis refuses. It happened at one time when there was Deputy Chair Mwencha from Kenya. It happened, I think, in 2008, maybe 9. Then it disappeared. The budget never comes to PAP. And you spoke of need for accountability. But the union today, ask anyone in the union, they will tell you there, no, we just spend the money. They just spend. It says powers of PAP oversee the development and implementation of policies and programs of the union. And then the question is, have we ever used these powers? Organize debate on the objectives, policies, aims, programs, and activities of regional economic communities, and all matters relating to proper functioning of organs. Examine and express opinion on various aspects of the operation of the union. I'm just skipping a lot. Just to agree with you that you are right. We have to oversee, but it is not happening. But there's no money, of course, that we can do this. So we have a serious problem. And now we can move to, okay, I need to mention this. When you were presenting, we were really very happy. But one feature that impressed me and others, yes, you had a speech on the iPad speech, and you were able to use the iPad and you read and you went through. It's another good quality. That's good. You embrace technology even if you're a head of state. But more importantly, you did not just read the speech from start to end. 65 to 70% of your time, you forgot about the speech. You expressed your mind in terms of opinion. Now, that's very important. That's very, very important. It means you are actually talking of things that you know and understand very well. Unfortunately, not everybody may like this, but it's good. You know, this issue of you, even as MPs, being given speeches, and you bend on your paper from introduction up to the conclusion, that's like this. It shows that those are not even your ideas. Someone did it for you. You're just reading blindly. You see, you read, leave text, talk to the text, come back, and that, we need to clap for that. Now, because of his quality, caliber, and competence, we agreed with him that we will allow some questions from the floor. That is a rare opportunity. Most heads of state don't want question time. But for him, we agreed from the floor. Now, managing, we have so many numbers. If we try to say everybody behind, it will go until 6 o'clock. So the way we did it, with your permission, we asked caucus chairpersons and say, we would want 5 questions only. And caucus chairpersons, can you caucus and say whatever questions you have a name of a person from each region that can rise and ask a question. So I already have the names. But no, let's go with the democracy. Let's go, Jacqueline. Let's go with the democracy. Brian, let's be focused. Right. We have 5 questions only from each region, 1. Now, if you feel your question is so fundamental and it can add a lot of value, and then you write it, and these ladies over there, the ushers be alert, ushers, I can see some conversing like those there, look, they're just talking and they are not ushers for us. Someone tell those ushers, you ushers should stand always like this, looking at if there's an MP who wants assistance. Not to talk, you talk too much, you ushers. You just talk among yourselves. You don't even see who wants attention. Now, you rise, you give your paper to the usher, written question. Then we look at it and then get convinced that it will make a difference. Otherwise, it will make a difference. So, we'll do that nicely from there, but I'll ask the first person to come from Western Caucasus. Honorable Shuabu Torey is from the Gambia, Western Caucasus. Please take the floor. Yes, from there.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Mr. President. And I thank the President of Kenya for the brilliant speech, which has satisfied all of us. Not to take much time, I want to emphasize that the talking, the dialogue, and the action must go together. Honorable President, considering the developed countries' unwillingness to engage in technological transfer to ensure Africa that lies...
Order, I know all of you, so I'll mention your name this time, that you are creating disorder. Please.
Thank you. Considering that developed countries' unwillingness to engage in technological transfer since independence to ensure that Africa, which lies under the equator, becomes the example to develop in conformity with nature, and also considering that the world is in competition, whether we like it or not, would you, Mr. President, be willing and kind enough to spearhead and advocate for the establishment of a climate change research institution or center for Africa that would build and innovate the technological know-how to tackle Africa's much desired development, industrial development? Thank you.
Thank you. It's better we just go through all the questions. Number 2, from the Northern Caucasus, Professor Randa Mustafa.
شكرا سيادة الرئيس. بادئ ذي بدء أود أن أتقدم بجزيل الشكر لفخامة الرئيس دكتور ويليام روتو رئيس جمهورية.
Just hold on.
Yes, okay. Sorry. Okay. He's a doctor. He's a doctor, right? Oh, yes.
You can proceed.
Thank you very much. باسم إقليم شمال إفريقيا أود أن أتقدم بجزيل الشكر لمعالي الرئيس دكتور ويليام روتو رئيس جمهورية كينيا رئيس لجنة
No interpretation. Arabic, English.
No interpretation.
French is okay? French? Yes, French is okay. English, none. Swahili, Portuguese.
Speak in English?
No, wait. Even if you speak in English, there will be no Arabic.
Yes, right. Right.
Arabic, where are you? Arabic into English.
Channel is open, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry?
The channel is open. On behalf of the North African Caucus, I would like to thank my sincere thanks to His Excellency Dr. William Ruto.
On one, channel what? Channel 1.
Yes, President.
Why is it that people are still complaining? Why?
It's okay.
All right, let's proceed. Let's see. Proceed.
أوكي. بداية باسم إقليم.
I would like, on behalf of the North Africa group, I would like to express my sincere thanks to His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Chair of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change. Mr. President, sir, you really sparked hope for the peoples of Africa. Mr. President, you have given us renewed confidence in the fact that Africa can function as a united continent. We shall, by God's grace, be in a position to ensure justice, environmental climate justice for the peoples of Africa. In Egypt, how can you guide us to ensure that African countries respect their financial commitments? We have the $100 billion a year annually that were to come to African countries that are the least responsible for the effects of climate change and the most affected by climate change. So how is it that we can get these countries to honor their commitments, and how can we speak with one single voice? Thank you, Mr. President.
Southern Africa, Honorable Rodrigue Samu Kumbanyiwa.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Honorable Chief Chalumbira, our President. I also thank the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Ruto. Your Excellency, Malawi, like many other countries in Southern Africa, has been hit hard by the efforts of climate change, which has exposed major challenges in disaster response and has exposed major challenges in disaster response and recovery mechanisms. As opposed to the response in Turkey, which has massive, the disaster response in Africa has been low. What response strategy is the African Union envisaging, considering that disasters are now becoming even more common? In addition, Your Excellency, despite various commitments made at global level with regard to climate financing, not much has happened. At the same time, developing countries such as Malawi are left with a huge burden of contending with effects of climate change that has been caused to a large extent by rich countries. In your view, Your Excellency, what shall be done to mobilize adequate resources for purposes of mitigation, as well as financing adaptation efforts to the effects of climate change, and also to fund the recovery process in the countries ravaged by the effects of climate change? I thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Honorable Kumbanyiwa. This is East African Caucus, Honorable Mondon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Your Excellency, Mr. President, as you know, most countries of eastern region of Africa borders with the ocean, from which hundreds of millions of people depend on for their livelihood. And the narrative today is that we should stop talking and move to concrete actions that will make a difference. Your Excellency, many countries have taken initiatives to mitigate and adapt to climate change. For example, Seychelles was the first country to adopt the depth debt swap initiative through conservation of maritime space. So, but we need to do more. It is clear that we need to do more. So my question is, what do you consider the most important thing we should do today, collectively and individually, to build climate resilience in our region in regards to maritime conservation? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Central Africa, Honorable Molisho.
Merci, honorable.
Honorable President, thank you so much. We would like to begin by thanking His Excellency, President Ruto. We were actually asking ourselves whether it was Nkrumah, it was Bourguiba, it was Kaunda who were present in this assembly. Their spirit was prevailing over us, and it is thanks to their spirit that you evoked, Mr. President, that I would like to contribute comments from Central Africa. You asked a question about the Congo Basin. The Congo Basin are the lungs of the world. You spoke to the issue of the carbon trade. 800 million tons of carbon reside within the basin of the Congo. And the Central Africa, countries where the basin of the Congo lies, face climate change effects. The Congo Basin also has natural resources for energy transition. As you know, 65% of the European Union's needs in cobalt come from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The same applies to other rare minerals. As you know, Mr. President, bearing in mind the spirit with which you have spoken to us, how do you see Africa turning towards the countries of the West to ensure that Central Africa, with this basin to which I have referred, truly benefits from the contributions that we are making to the global balance? What are your comments on this, Mr. President?
I think it's fair to say all caucuses have now contributed. I have some pieces of paper here. I'll read one of them, which is for your commitment on climate change, Mr. President. The African youth, through the African Youth Commission, would like to have you, the President, as their high-level climate ambassador on youth engagement and climate action. Yeah, I think we end there because this one is too technical. It is for the Mwendas and the others, which want us to elaborate on carbon trading market regulation and replicate it in the continent. I think this should have been for the main workshop, maybe in the afternoon. Yes. Your Excellency, you can respond from there if you like, using the mic. You want there? Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, let me also appreciate the comments that have been made by the honorable members of this August House, and to assure you that we're just doing our bit because we owe it to the people of our continent to provide the leadership that they have entrusted to us. Let me also take up the challenge that has been pushed my direction by the President of the Pan-African Parliament on making sure that this August House, this Parliament, has a voice at the highest level possible in terms of getting this House to do what the African constitutive articles wanted it to do. I want to tell you, Mr. President and honorable members, that I am a great believer in accountability. In our own parliament in Kenya, when I came into office, I did request the houses to change the standing orders so that members of my cabinet can get to the floor of the House to answer questions, including the difficult ones, as a means of ensuring that there is accountability in my administration. The law in Kenya, for those of you who may not know, is that in the past, for the last 10 years, members of cabinet could only appear in committees of parliament. But I changed this year so that members of my administration, ministers, can go to the floor and face the people's representatives. Because I am a great believer in accountability, I will take up the request you have asked me, Mr. President, and I will make sure that I champion the interest of this August Assembly to provide oversight and to provide accountability to our organization. And I will start next month when I host the Mid-Year Africa Union Summit in Nairobi. I will invite you, Mr. President. I know you have said that you have not been invited before. I will invite you. Please prepare a good speech. And come and make a good case for this Parliament. I will give you all the time that you need. And hopefully going forward, working with the current chair of our summit, we will reposition the place of this Parliament in the architecture of the Africa Union.
Thank you.
On the matters that have been asked, my good brother from Gambia, on technology transfer and the centrality of technology in the energy transition that we envisage and the economic growth going into the future, technology is going to be front and center. The positive thing we have is the young people of our continent are tech savvy, they are creative, they are innovative. Let me give you an example. In Kenya, we came up with the M-Pesa innovation that now is world acclaimed, and it was done by the young people of our country. It tells you there is a repository of talent, of innovation, of creativity in our continent. And therefore, technology is going to be our next frontier. The positive thing we have is that technology is evolving. We don't have to buy yesterday's technology. We invent tomorrow's technology. And our young people have the capacity to invent the innovations of the future. The good positive thing is that we will not need to depend on the goodwill of anybody. We will depend on the agility, the creativity, the innovation of our young people. And this is the youngest continent. And therefore, we have the greatest potential. I just want to assure you that you do not have to worry as to whether our development partners are willing to work with us. They will have no choice because we will have the resource that they so much need for us to move together into the future. My good brother Randa Mustafa, sister, I think, sister, has said about COP27 and the success we made in dealing with the subject of loss and damage, which was a positive step. But as we all know, that conversation, as I said earlier in my speech, is a controversial conversation. There are people who want to treat this loss and damage issue as if it is a favor, as if it is something that we are helping, or they are helping us. Yeah? We have made the case that we are merely solving a problem others created. But since that debate seems to be going not too far, we have to rethink. They say doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is madness. And you know we are not mad. We are very innovative, creative people. Since that seems not to be going very far, that is why we are rethinking. We are telling these guys, hey, stop looking at us and don't consign us to solving problems you created. We have a different way of looking at this. We want to assist, not you, all of us, to solve this problem. And we have ideas, we have suggestions, and that is what we want to put on the table that will create a win-win outcome. That is the paradigm shift I was talking about, that will look at us in a different way. And in fact, there are now proposals on carbon tax. You know, our friends in that are responsible for the pollution that we are all suffering from now do not want us to discuss about carbon tax. But I mean, it's something that we must finally have a conversation about. And that is why we are going to Paris. We want to go and have a candid conversation. And I am happy that the European Parliament have actually, to a great extent, agreed with us that the discussion about carbon tax is no longer a sterile conversation. It is a pregnant, real conversation. So that's the direction we want to push, and I am very confident that we will bring this conversation home. And as I said, we will be present, we will be consistent, we will be coherent, and we will be loud. And we will make sure that there isn't a conversation until we are on the table. Our good brother from Malawi, and I want to, in a very special way, you know, think about the over 1,000 people that died in floods in Malawi. I spoke to President Chakwera about this incident, the adverse effects of climate change. In Kenya, we lost 2.5 million livestock because of drought. That's how serious this climate change phenomena is. And as my good brother from Malawi said, we are left with huge losses of crops, people, livestock, and all. And how are we prepared as a continent to deal with these challenges? What kind of response are we able to provide? Unfortunately for now, there isn't much in terms of response coming from us as a continent, because our act is not together. We depend more on development partners than on ourselves, even on matters that we can afford. You know, let me give you a case in point. We're trying to sort out matters in Somalia, and we've been threatened by the people who have been supporting Somalia that they are going to pull out their resources. So we decided to interrogate how much is this? And it was 85 million euros. Now we ask ourselves, 85 million euros? You know, Kenya can fund 85 million euros. Why are we, you know, a whole continent is begging people for 85 million. We look. So we have to stop that kind of mentality. There are things we can sort out ourselves. We must not be looking for help. And the more we look for help in small matters like that, the more we undermine our own confidence and the more we look like we are stupid. I'm sorry. That's what it is. So we need to be serious. We can sort out Somalia. Somalia is our neighborhood. We have agreed with President Museveni, with the Prime Minister Abiy, that we will sort out Somalia. Even if others pull out, we will sort it out. It is our neighborhood, right? And we must begin, when we say we are providing African solutions, they must be real, they must be tangible. It cannot be talk. Okay? So, unfortunately, my good brother from Malawi, our good continent at present, cannot do much. But let me promise you that acting in concert, working together, getting our voice, getting our act together, we will be able to derive adequate resources in a win-win arrangement from the climate financing and climate investment that will make it possible for all our countries to not only drive our economic growth, to not only address the challenge of climate change, but to also give us adequate resources to deal with adaptation, mitigation, resilience, and even the challenge that we have, like the one of floods in Malawi. It is the only way we can provide a lasting, sustainable solution. I'm happy that people are asking in the question that the chair asked, how is this carbon trading, how is this carbon market working? Precisely, that's the conversation we must be having. Because to stop the debate around people giving us handouts and discussing debt and discussing, we have assets, we have carbon assets that we can sell. We just need to agree on the market. That's all. You know, we just need to agree. We are providing carbon sinks. Let us cost. You are producing the carbon, we are helping to sink it. You know? So let's agree on the price. And then you pay for a service, you pay for an asset. We're not asking for free money, and we don't want debt relief, and we don't want the aid. We have assets that we can sell and we can make our own money. And it is not small money. Are we together? So that is the kind of engagement, Mr. President, that this House should be working on. Because we can do it as countries, the way Kenya is doing. But it would be a lot better if we acted as Africa. We can carry everybody. We can leverage on technology. We can leverage on knowledge. We can leverage on expertise. We can leverage on science if we are working together. And if we speak as a continent, nobody can afford not to listen. Are we together? Yes. Thank you very much. Mondon, is it, from the East African Caucus? My good brother from Mauritius, Seychelles, sorry, has said that what are we going to be doing to leverage on our ocean technology? Oceans, by the way, are the largest carbon sinks. Last week, there was a meeting in Mauritius, and the discussion in Mauritius was about the tuna resources in the Indian Ocean countries. And you know what? The 100 and I don't know how many 100 countries in Europe who have no ocean, they were the ones deciding for us. Because, and you know, they have the largest share of tuna resources in our own waters. Really? You know, we need to break that meeting. We need to tell that meeting it will not happen again. And we should not entertain that meeting where people who have no resources in the Indian Ocean are the ones deciding how it is going to be shared. What kind of nonsense is that? I mean, honestly, you know, when I was briefed by my minister of blue economy, I told him he should have banged the tables and the meeting should not have happened. So really, you know, we understate our case many times. And we look weak when we are actually strong. Huh? So we have the opportunity to do this together. But you know, unless you make your case, you know, nobody's going to make it for you. You're always going to be treated to pleasantries and handouts when you actually are supposed to be a shareholder of what is happening. So again, we have a big opportunity in oceans as a platform for carbon sinks, and we should be able to profile ourselves positively, especially around carbon trading, around carbon markets, and around carbon financing. And hopefully we can share experiences, because that's a space that we are recruiting experts so that they can help us create integrity around the carbon markets, so that not only are brokers benefiting, but also communities and governments at every level, they are benefiting from this carbon trading. And it is the same thing with what my brother from Central Africa was saying about the Congo Basin. The Congo Basin is among the largest carbon sinks in the world. And, as he says correctly, resources are being extracted from the Congo Basin into Europe and China, when the same resources are actually needed for the energy transition in Congo itself. We shouldn't be exporting those resources. Instead, they should be coming with technology and coming with financing so that we can use those resources to tap into the huge hydro resource that can power green energy from the Congo. In fact, the Congo River and Basin can produce 40% of all the energy needs of our continent. 40% from just one place in Congo. So we should be telling these good people, let us exchange. We have the resources, come with the technology, come with the financing. Once we generate this clean energy and use it for green industrialization, we will share what comes out of it. But meanwhile, the investments will be in our continent, the jobs will be in our continent, and we can use the resources that come out of this to balance trade with you. It should be as simple as that. And that is the argument, my good brother from Congo, that we are going to put forward. You know, we are going to put forward this argument. And that is why we are having this conversation in Nairobi. We want to document all our assets and tell these people, these assets of ours, you are not going to take them anymore. You go bring the technology, go bring the financing, we are ready. Are we together? Yes. So, I hope you guys stand your ground in this august house. I am really banking on you. Yes. And I promise that I will champion your cause only on condition that you work with us to get Africa in the right place. Yeah? Because we collectively have that responsibility. Yeah? So thank you very much. I don't know whether there are any other questions. About the Youth Commission climate ambassador issue. If you get me a bit of detail, we will see how we can go about it. I know Dr. Mibika has addressed it with me earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I answer them in Nairobi?
Yes,
When you come
answer,
to
yes. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of interest, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. A lot of interest.
Let me say, all those who have asked me questions, consider it a ticket to come to Nairobi. I will come and answer when you come to Nairobi.
Yeah, several questions, and if we sorry,
didn't write your names.
Yes.
Okay,
if
please, Chairman, make sure they put their names.
Okay. Then, if we had to go through all these questions, we would need another hour. So please allow that we end here on questions. But we have a request for an announcement by the team led by Her Excellency Mera Sultan Al Suwaidi from the United Arab Emirates. They want to make an announcement. Now, as the host of COP28, I think that announcement could be useful to us. So, can you take the floor?
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, President Ruto of Kenya, and Your Excellency, President Charumbira of the Pan-African Parliament. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I chose to speak in English instead of Arabic to make sure that the people on stage will be able to understand and we won't need the translation for them. Thank you very much for inviting us to this very important summit, especially that the United Arab Emirates will be hosting COP28 from November 30 to December 12 this year in Dubai. It will be the first time since the Paris Agreement, since COP21, that there will be a global stock take, and this will happen in my country. And as the presidency of COP, we will be focused on increasing our efforts in climate change without leaving any country behind. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to speak to you, and what I wanted to make sure that I highlight is that even if the United Arab Emirates is an oil-producing country, but all our oil extraction operations are done on a clean basis. All our operations are dependent fully on nuclear and solar. And we as a country have the 3 largest solar power plants in the world. We also have the largest renewable energy company, Masdar, and have invested over $140 billion globally in over 70 nations, a lot of which are African nations. We are here today and in this very important summit because we want to make it clear to African nations that we want to increase cooperation with Africa, especially on the climate change agenda, on topics that all of you today have mentioned: the loss and damage fund, managing resources efficiently, renewable energy, awareness and training, sustainable farming, technology and innovation in all the different sectors, as well as knowledge transfer. Our strategy as the UAE is focused on sustainable development and environment protection for a more sustainable future for our children and our children's children. And that does not include only our children, but also your children. We invite you, African nations, to participate with us and hold our hands as we help make COP28 a success and make it a COP for action. And we hope to see you in Dubai at the end of this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, United Arab Emirates. Your Excellency, it is appropriate now that as a joint team of Pan-African Parliament and the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance led by Dr. Mwenda, that Dr. Mwenda, since I did the opening, you close. So it's a sign of teamwork. So you come deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So I'm not coming back now to make another statement. So, as a Kenyan, you know, for us, dealing with, we call him WSR, William Samoei Ruto, becomes very difficult because now, you know, if you are not listening, watching him, you think that he has a teleprompter. Because he has everything, even the questions which were being asked, everything has been answered. So somebody asked a very technical question, then I was jotting some notes to give him so that he can answer it. He answered it even more perfectly than myself. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are energized, aren't we? Are we energized? Yes. Let us appreciate if we do that. Are we inspired? Yes. We talked about treatise. It's not actually a statement, and it will outlive this assembly. And so, I believe that we are catalyzed. Are we catalyzed for action? Are we? Yes. All right. And then we are galvanized. All of us are together. And so, mine is just to say thank you very much to all of you. And we are now dedicated, as it was said by our president, and His Excellency mentioned it. We are going to make it noisy, isn't it? We are going to make it messy and louder. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I think for us as PAGJA, once again, we look forward to working with everybody of you. We look forward to the Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi. And for your information, His Excellency the President has promised for the next 10 years, he is going to plant or ensure we plant in Kenya 15 billion trees. And as a joint commitment, when we are in Nairobi during the Africa Climate Summit, though it is going to be a dry season, we are going to plant as many trees as a remarkable reminder of this partnership. Thank you very much, and may God bless you. Thank you. So I've been asked to remain there still. Thank you. So do I continue speaking? I don't want, because I repeat myself. Just to acknowledge actually also the large delegation from the Kenya National Parliament, the Assembly, the Senate, and the Kenya National Assembly. And this is very inspiring, the leadership which has been really mobilized by His Excellency. And let us appreciate this, the Kenyan delegation. It is really inspiring. If we get another president who is doing that, this can be really energize Africa. Let us appreciate them. Thank you. Thank you very much. And for the Secretariat of the Pan-African Parliament, the Secretariat of PAGA, and all the Bureau and all our allies, we will remain committed to this agenda until we ensure that Africa, the African continent, has our voice. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The more I stay here, I'm a very great talker, the more I'm inspired to talk. Thank you.
You are finished.
I've finished.
Yes, it's okay. You are finished. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. During this, I'll call it interlude, let me just give a line of a timeline where we are going. After this, we are going to present a gift to our guest of honor. After presentation of the gift, we'll go for photo session outside our usual place with the guest of honor. After the photo session, we'll go for lunch at Gallagher for everybody. We are all invited for lunch with His Excellency. After lunch, you come back to the chamber to finish the program. There is one session that has not been covered, including the final resolutions, recommendations, to tie up everything together after lunch. Let's come out. Let's not disappear until we finish everything and agree how you want to move forward. Yeah, basically, that's where we are. Presentation of gifts, photo session, lunch, come back. Your Excellency, in the typical African culture, when you just praise and praise and praise, yet you don't give that person even some mangoes, and just say, well done. In African culture, you present something to show that it's coming from your heart. It is true. Even some sweet potatoes or something like that. So we do have some sweet potatoes. So we invite you again to come to somewhere there. Yes, we have a gift. Some call it a souvenir to remember that you once graced us. Sorry? No. Sorry, yes. It should be handed over that way. Okay. Thank you. Asante sana. I've just said asante sana. Asante sana. Thank you very much. You can take your seat.
We'll now have the African Union item. After the anthem, we'll all remain standing to allow our guests of honor to leave the chamber for the photo session, and the rest of the delegates will follow suit.
Together, there is a song for our liberation. rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, fils et filles de l'Afrique, chers du soleil, chers du ciel, faisons de l'Afrique la vraie de vie. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice on earth. Oh, filhos, filhas da África, essência do sol, essência do céu, façamos da África voz da vida. Let us all unite and talk together to give the best we have to Africa. The cradle of mankind, the fount of culture, our pride and hope at break of dawn. Ya amna wa banat Afrika, lubu asam shwa kentu sama. Afrika shajaratul ayat.